The ancient observatory floated in the void between galaxies, its crystalline spires catching starlight from 1,000 different worlds. Inside its highest tower, four beings moved with graceful precision, their translucent wings creating soft harmonies as they worked. The Kethmori had waited here for 3,000 Earth years, maintaining their vigil with patience that only immortal beings could possess. Zara, the eldest of the four sisters, stood before a massive viewing portal that stretched from floor to ceiling. Her four wings, each spanning twice her height, shimmered with patterns of deep blue and silver. The membrane between the delicate bone structures pulsed with bioluminescent veins that responded to her emotions. Right now, those veins glowed with anticipation mixed with growing concern. "The calculations remain unchanged," she announced to her sisters, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The humans will arrive within the next solar cycle. All indicators point to the same conclusion we reached millennia ago." Behind her, Lisa looked up from the complex array of instruments she had been calibrating. Her wings, smaller than Zara's but more vibrant in their green and gold coloring, fluttered nervously. As the youngest sister, she had never lived in a universe without the knowledge that humans existed somewhere among the stars. To her, they were not a discovery but a constant presence in her consciousness. "But what if we are wrong?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if the ancient texts misinterpreted the prophecies? What if humans are not what we believe them to be?" The third sister, Naya, emerged from the depths of the archive chamber, her arms full of crystal tablets that contained the accumulated wisdom of their civilization. Her wings bore the scars of her scholarly pursuits, marked with fine lines where she had accidentally brushed against sharp-edged artifacts during her research. The purple and white patterns on her wing membranes had grown more intricate over the centuries, as if her increasing knowledge had somehow written itself into her very biology. "The texts are clear," Naya said, carefully placing the tablets on the central table. "Across 17 different civilizations, separated by both distance and time, the same story emerges. A species that arose from a world of water and earth, beings who possessed something our kind had never encountered, the ability to change not just themselves, but the fundamental nature of reality around them through sheer force of will." The fourth sister, Kira, remained silent in her corner, her black and crimson wings folded tightly against her back. She was the warrior among them, the protector who had trained for combat scenarios that might never come. Her wings were the most muscular, built for speed and agility rather than the sustained flight her sisters preferred. The patterns on her membranes were sharp and angular, like warning signs written in an alien script. "Change reality through force of will," Kira finally spoke, her voice carrying a note of skepticism. "You make them sound like gods, Naya. But the reports also speak of their capacity for destruction, their tendency toward violence against their own kind. What if they arrive not as the salvation our ancestors predicted, but as conquerors?" Zara turned away from the viewing portal, her ancient eyes reflecting the wisdom of millennia. "That is precisely why we are here, sisters. Not to worship them or to fear them, but to understand them. The Kethmori have survived this long by learning to adapt, by finding common ground with species vastly different from ourselves. If the humans are truly coming, we must be ready to meet them not as subjects or enemies, but as equals." The observatory's main chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the quantum processors that maintained their vigil. Each sister returned to her duties, but the weight of anticipation hung heavy in the recycled air. Outside the crystal walls, space stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with the light of distant stars and the promise of change. Lisa moved to her favorite workstation, where banks of sensors monitored subspace frequencies across a sphere of influence that encompassed several hundred light-years. Her young eyes were better than her sisters at spotting the subtle patterns that might indicate faster-than-light travel. She had been the first to detect the anomalous energy signatures that suggested something unprecedented was moving through the galaxy. "Zara," she called out, her voice tight with excitement. "I'm seeing something new on the long-range sensors. It's faint, but the pattern matches the theoretical models for human propulsion systems." All four sisters converged on Lisa's station, their wings creating a canopy of color over the displays. The readings were indeed unusual, showing energy signatures that did not match any known technology. The propulsion method appeared to involve the manipulation of spacetime itself, bending reality to allow for travel at speeds that should have been impossible.
How far out? Zara asked, her wing patterns brightening with anticipation.
Approximately 47 standard days at their current velocity, Lisa calculated quickly.
But, Zara, there's something else. The signature suggests multiple vessels, possibly an entire fleet.
Kara's wings tensed, her combat instincts immediately engaged.
A military expedition. I knew it. They're not coming in peace.
We cannot know their intentions from sensor readings alone, Naya interjected, her scholarly mind refusing to jump to conclusions. Large groups could indicate exploration, colonization, or yes, military action. We must gather more data before making assumptions.
Zara watched the sensor displays with growing fascination. After 3,000 years of waiting, the moment was finally approaching.
Her ancestors had dedicated their lives to preparing for this day, building the observatory and training successive generations to serve as first contact specialists.
The responsibility felt overwhelming. We will continue our observations, she decided.
But, we must also begin final preparations. If the humans arrive within 47 days, we must be ready to communicate with them, to demonstrate our peaceful intentions, and to learn everything we can about their nature and capabilities.
The sisters spent the following hours in intense activity. Naya disappeared into the archives to review every scrap of information they possessed about human psychology and culture. Lisa focused her instruments on the approaching fleet, gathering every detail the sensors could provide. Kira began reviewing defensive protocols, not out of aggression but from a realistic understanding that first contact situations could go wrong in countless ways. Zara, meanwhile, stood alone at the observation portal, watching the stars and thinking about the weight of history.
The Kethmori had encountered dozens of spacefaring species over their long existence, but none had generated the kind of legends that surrounded humanity. Other races spoke of them in whispers, describing capabilities that seemed to border on the supernatural. According to the collected stories, humans possess something called innovation, a trait that allowed them to solve problems in ways that had never been attempted before. They could adapt to environments that would kill most other species, not through biological evolution but through the rapid development of technology and techniques. Most remarkably, they seemed to inspire change in other species simply through contact. But the stories also contained warnings. Humans were said to be unpredictable, capable of great kindness and terrible cruelty sometimes within the same individual. They formed bonds of loyalty that transcended logic, but they also fought wars of such intensity that entire worlds could be rendered uninhabitable. They were builders and destroyers, explorers and conquerors, often simultaneously.
What are you, really? Zara whispered to the stars. And what will your arrival mean for all of us? As if in response to her question, the observatory's communication array suddenly came alive with activity.
The sisters rushed to the central console as streams of data began flowing across their displays. The signals were clearly artificial, but unlike anything in their databases. The mathematical structures underlying the transmissions were elegant and complex, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of physics and information theory.
It's them, Lisa breathed. They're trying to communicate.
Naya quickly began analyzing the signal structure, her centuries of linguistic training allowing her to identify patterns and mathematical relationships. The base mathematics are familiar, but the application is unique. They're using quantum entanglement as a carrier wave, something we theorized but never attempted.
Can we respond? Zara asked.
I think so, but we need to be careful about what we say.
This first exchange will set the tone for everything that follows.
Kira moved to the tactical station, monitoring for any signs that the communication attempt was a prelude to attack. Her sensors showed no weapon signatures, but human technology was largely unknown to them. For all they knew, the communication beam itself could be some form of weapon.
They're repeating the signal, Lisa reported.
Same pattern, same mathematical structure.
It's definitely intentional communication. Zara made her decision. Naya, prepare a response.
Use the universal mathematical constants as a foundation, but include elements that will demonstrate our intelligence and peaceful intentions. Lisa, continue monitoring their approach vector. Kira, maintain defensive readiness but do nothing that could be interpreted as hostile. The next several hours were a blur of activity as the sisters worked to establish meaningful communication with the approaching human fleet. The mathematical exchanges gradually became more complex, evolving from basic arithmetic to advanced physics concepts. It became clear that both sides were testing each other's knowledge and capabilities. Then, suddenly, the nature of the communication changed. Instead of pure mathematics, the humans began transmitting something that could only be described as art, complex patterns of color and sound that served no practical purpose but demonstrated creativity and aesthetic sensibility. The transmissions included what appeared to be music, visual compositions, and even mathematical poetry. They're trying to show us who they are, Naya realized. Not just their technological capabilities, but their culture, their way of thinking. What should we send in return? Lisa asked. Zara looked around at her sisters, each representing a different aspect of Kethmori civilization. We send ourselves. Our music, our art, our poetry. Let them see us as we truly are. The cultural exchange that followed was unlike anything in the Kethmori historical records. The humans shared fragments of their literature, samples of their music, and visual art that seemed to capture emotions in ways the sisters had never experienced. In return, the Kethmori transmitted the wingsongs of their people, crystalline sculptures that grew in response to specific harmonic frequencies, and poetry written in mathematical equations that described the beauty of flight. As the communication continued, a remarkable thing began to happen. The barrier between the two species started to dissolve, replaced by a growing sense of mutual recognition. Despite their vastly different evolutionary paths, both humans and Kethmori shared certain fundamental qualities: curiosity about the universe, appreciation for beauty, and a drive to explore beyond the boundaries of their home worlds. They're not what the stories suggested, Kira admitted, her defensive posture relaxing as the artistic exchanges continued. There's no aggression in these transmissions, no attempt to intimidate or dominate. They seem genuinely interested in mutual understanding. Perhaps the stories focus too much on their capacity for conflict and not enough on their capacity for connection, Naya suggested. After all, a species that could not cooperate would never have achieved spaceflight. Lisa suddenly looked up from her instruments with excitement. Zara, they're transmitting coordinates. They want to meet in person. The proposed meeting point was in the neutral space between their current positions, far enough from both groups to ensure safety but close enough to allow for real-time communication. The humans were suggesting a face-to-face encounter, something that required enormous trust given that neither species fully understood the other's biology or intentions. It's a risk, Kira pointed out. We know virtually nothing about their environmental requirements, their social structures, or their protocols for peaceful contact. One misunderstanding could lead to disaster. But it's also an opportunity, Zara countered. For 3,000 years, we have wondered what this moment would be like. Now we have the chance to find out. The sisters spent the remainder of the day preparing for the historic meeting. They selected a small transport vessel that could accommodate all four of them while also providing adequate life support for extended operations. Naya compiled a comprehensive database of everything they knew about human culture and psychology. Lisa configured their communication equipment for real-time translation. Kira checked and rechecked their defensive systems, not out of suspicion but from professional thoroughness. As they made their final preparations, Zara found herself thinking about the generations of Kethmori who had dedicated their lives to this moment. Her own great-grandmother had helped design the observatory. Her mother had been among the linguists who developed the mathematical communication protocols they had used earlier. Now, after millennia of preparation, the moment of truth was finally at hand. "Are we ready?" she asked her sisters as they gathered in the transport vessel's command center. "As ready as anyone can be for something that has never happened before," Naya replied with a slight smile. "The sensors show the human vessel approaching the rendezvous coordinates," Lisa reported. "They're maintaining a respectful distance and showing no signs of hostile intent." "Then, let's go meet them," Zara decided.
Whatever happens next, we face it together. The transport vessel detached from the observatory with a soft vibration, beginning its journey toward a meeting that would change the course of galactic history. Behind them, the ancient station continued its eternal vigil, its sensors monitoring the exchange and recording every detail for future generations. In the depths of space, two species that had evolved on opposite sides of the galaxy were about to meet for the first time. The outcome of that meeting would depend not on the weapons they carried or the technologies they commanded, but on their ability to recognize the fundamental similarities that connected all intelligent life. The four winged sisters flew toward their destiny, carrying with them the hopes and fears of their entire civilization. In just a few hours, they would learn whether the legends about humanity were true, and whether the long wait had been worthwhile. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath as two very different forms of consciousness prepared to encounter each other in the vast emptiness between the stars. The human vessel appeared on their sensors like a geometric impossibility, its hull reflecting starlight in patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Unlike the organic curves of Kethmori architecture, the human ship was composed of sharp angles and intersecting planes that created an almost crystalline appearance. It was smaller than the sisters had expected, designed for efficiency rather than intimidation. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the exploration vessel New Horizons, watching the approaching Kethmori transport with a mixture of professional curiosity and barely contained excitement. After 18 years of deep space exploration, she had encountered dozens of alien species, but the mathematical elegance of the communications they had received suggested something unprecedented. The beings approaching them had demonstrated not just intelligence, but a sophisticated understanding of physics that rivaled humanity's greatest achievements. Biosigns are confirming 4 distinct life forms aboard the approaching vessel, reported Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez from the sensor station. The electromagnetic signatures suggest some form of bioluminescent communication system, possibly integrated into their nervous systems. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's xenobiologist, studied the sensor readings with growing fascination. The wing structures we detected earlier appear to be natural rather than technological. If I'm reading this correctly, they're capable of actual flight in atmospheric conditions, not just gliding. Atmospheric flight using organic wings large enough to support a human-sized body mass, Chen mused. The evolutionary pressures that would create such an adaptation must have been extraordinary. The New Horizons had been part of humanity's third major expansion wave, launched during the period when Earth's governments finally achieved the level of international cooperation necessary for truly ambitious space exploration projects. Chen's crew represented the best of human diversity, scientists, engineers, and explorers from every continent and culture, united by their shared desire to understand the universe and humanity's place within it. As the two vessels approached each other, both crews made final preparations for an encounter that would be recorded in history texts for millennia to come. The humans had developed sophisticated first-contact protocols based on decades of previous alien encounters, but the mathematical sophistication of the Kethmori suggested they were dealing with a species far more advanced than any they had previously encountered. "Commander, they're transmitting again," announced Communications Officer David Park. "Same quantum entanglement carrier wave, but the content is different. It looks like architectural blueprints?" Chen moved to the communication station, studying the three-dimensional holographic representations that materialized above the display. The designs were clearly for some kind of meeting facility, a temporary structure that could accommodate both human and Kethmori physiological requirements. The attention to detail was remarkable, showing provisions for different atmospheric mixtures, gravitational fields, and even lighting spectrums optimized for different visual systems. They want to build a neutral meeting space, Dr. Vasquez realized. Somewhere neither side would have a technological advantage. "The engineering is impressive," added Chief Engineer Lisa Thompson, studying the structural specifications. "These joint connection systems would allow for rapid assembly and disassembly, and the materials they're suggesting would be completely inert to most forms of life. It's like they've thought of everything." Chen made her decision quickly. "Send our approval and begin fabrication of the components they've specified for our section. If they want to meet in a neutral environment they've designed, we'll accommodate them." The next several hours were a flurry of activity as both vessels worked to construct the meeting facility in the space between them.
The Kethmori proved to be master engineers, their construction techniques involving some form of molecular manipulation that allowed them to shape materials at the atomic level. The humans responded with their own technological marvels, using portable matter converters to fabricate the required components from basic elements. Watching the construction process, Chen was struck by the differences in approach between the two species. The humans worked with methodical precision, following detailed plans and conducting multiple safety checks at each stage. The Kethmori seemed to work more intuitively, their construction flowing like a form of artistic expression while still achieving the exact specifications required. It's like watching two different philosophies of engineering, Thompson observed. We build things to last and to meet exact specifications. They're building something that's functional but also beautiful. The completed meeting structure was indeed beautiful, a transparent sphere approximately 50 meters in diameter with internal subdivisions that could be reconfigured as needed. The life support systems were completely redundant, capable of maintaining a dozen different environmental configurations simultaneously. Most remarkably, the entire structure could be assembled or disassembled in less than 4 hours.
Commander, the Kethmori are requesting permission to come aboard the meeting facility, Park reported.
They're also transmitting what appears to be biological data about themselves, probably to ensure we can provide appropriate accommodations. Chen studied the data with Dr. Vasquez, learning that the Kethmori required a slightly higher oxygen content than humans and preferred lower light levels. Their body temperature was several degrees cooler than human normal, and they communicated partially through bioluminescent patterns in their wing membranes. Most importantly, they appeared to be completely non-threatening from a biological standpoint, with no toxic secretions or aggressive adaptations.
Prepare a welcoming committee, Chen decided.
Dr. Vasquez, Mr. Park, and myself will make initial contact. Everyone else monitors from the ship and maintains communication protocols. The journey to the meeting facility took only a few minutes, but Chen found herself reviewing everything humanity had learned about first contact situations. The key principles were simple: demonstrate peaceful intentions, show respect for alien customs, and maintain clear communication while avoiding assumptions about alien motivations or capabilities.
As they entered the meeting facility, Chen was immediately struck by its sophisticated design.
The internal gravity was perfectly calibrated to accommodate both species, and the atmospheric mixture was exactly as specified. Soft, pleasant lighting provided adequate visibility without being harsh to either human or Kethmori vision. The space felt welcoming rather than sterile.
The Kethmori were already waiting for them. Chen's first impression was of grace and beauty.
The four beings moved with fluid precision, their translucent wings creating patterns of color and light that seemed to respond to their emotional states. They were roughly humanoid in general proportions but clearly evolved for flight, with hollow bones and enlarged chest cavities that suggested powerful respiratory systems. The eldest of the four stepped forward, her wings settling into a formal pattern that somehow conveyed dignity and welcome simultaneously. When she spoke, her words were transmitted through a sophisticated translation device that converted her natural language into perfectly understandable English. I am Zara, eldest of my sisters and guardian of this sector. We have waited many generations for this meeting, and we welcome you with open hearts and peaceful intentions. Chen responded with humanity's own formal greeting protocol, designed to convey respect and peaceful intentions. I am Commander Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Space Exploration Command. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and understanding among the stars. The formal introductions continued as each member of both groups shared their names and roles. Chen learned that Naya was a scholar and historian, Lisa was a scientist and sensor specialist, and Kira was a protector and tactical expert. The parallel roles in both crews suggested similar approaches to exploration and first contact situations. Your vessel, Zara observed, it travels using space-time manipulation rather than conventional propulsion.
This suggests a sophisticated understanding of physics that we find impressive. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward eagerly.
Your own technologies are equally remarkable. The molecular manipulation techniques you used in constructing this facility are far beyond our current capabilities.
We would be very interested in learning about your scientific achievements. What followed was the most extraordinary scientific exchange in human history.
The Kethmori had developed technologies based on fundamentally different principles than human science, focusing on biological integration and harmonic resonance rather than mechanical engineering. Their computers were grown rather than built, their ships were guided by quantum consciousness networks, and their manufacturing processes resembled artistic creation more than industrial production. The humans, in turn, shared their own technological marvels: artificial intelligence systems that could learn and adapt, matter conversion technologies that could transform any element into any other, and propulsion systems that allowed them to travel between distant stars in a matter of weeks rather than millennia. "Your species appears to have developed what you call innovation," Naya observed after listening to descriptions of human technological development. "The ability to find new solutions to old problems, to think beyond established patterns. Innovation is indeed one of humanity's greatest strengths," Chen agreed. "But it can also be one of our greatest weaknesses. Our drive to find new solutions sometimes leads us to abandon proven methods before we fully understand their implications." As the conversation continued, both groups began to understand that they were dealing with something unprecedented in galactic history. Most first contact situations involved species that were similar in fundamental ways, sharing common evolutionary pressures and technological approaches. The humans and Kethmori had evolved along completely different paths yet had achieved comparable levels of technological sophistication. "In our legends," Lisa said quietly, "humanity is described as the species that changes not just themselves, but everything they encounter. The stories speak of humans who inspire other races to achieve things they never thought possible." Chen considered this carefully. "Humans do have a tendency to challenge existing assumptions and push boundaries. But we've also learned that change for its own sake can be destructive. We've had to develop wisdom to go along with our innovation." Kira, who had remained largely silent during the scientific exchanges, finally spoke up. "The legends also speak of human capacity for conflict. Our histories describe wars fought with such intensity that entire star systems were rendered uninhabitable. How do we know that your peaceful intentions will remain peaceful?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, but Chen answered it with the honesty that had served humanity well in previous first contact situations. "You don't know, and neither do we. Humans are capable of both great kindness and terrible cruelty, sometimes within the same individual. But we've learned from our mistakes, and we've developed institutions and principles that help us choose cooperation over conflict." Besides, Dr. Vasquez added, "the capacity for both creation and destruction seems to be common to all intelligent species. The real question is whether we can find common ground that makes cooperation more beneficial than conflict." Zara listened to this exchange with growing understanding. The humans were not the godlike beings of legend, nor were they the destructive conquerors that some stories suggested. They were complex beings, capable of both wisdom and folly, much like the Kethmori themselves. "Perhaps," she suggested, "the real significance of this meeting is not that humans are somehow special, but that all intelligent species face the same fundamental choices between cooperation and conflict, between wisdom and folly." As the discussion continued, both groups began to realize that they were witnessing something historic. This was not just first contact between two species, but the beginning of a new phase in galactic civilization. The mathematical elegance of Kethmori science combined with human innovation could lead to technological breakthroughs that neither species could achieve alone. "We should establish a formal exchange program," Chen proposed. "Scientific expeditions, cultural exchanges, joint research projects. Both our species could benefit enormously from sustained cooperation." "The Council of Sisters would need to approve such arrangements," Zara replied, "but I believe they would welcome the opportunity. We have much to learn from each other." The meeting continued for several more hours as both groups worked out the details of future cooperation. They established communication protocols, planned joint research projects, and began designing cultural exchange programs that would allow members of both species to live and work together. As the session drew to a close, Chen found herself reflecting on the remarkable nature of what they had accomplished. In just a few hours, they had bridged millions of years of evolutionary separation and established the foundation for a partnership that could transform both civilizations.
There is one more thing, Naya said as the formal discussions wound down.
Our archives contain references to other species, civilizations that achieved spaceflight but, then, disappeared from the galaxy.
We believe some form of common threat may have been responsible for their extinction.
This information sent a chill through the human delegation. Chen's own experience had included encounters with the remnants of dead civilizations, worlds that had once thrived but now stood empty. The idea that some common threat might be responsible for such widespread extinction was deeply troubling.
What kind of threat? Chen asked.
The records are incomplete, Zara admitted, but they suggest something that appears periodically throughout galactic history, something that eliminates spacefaring civilizations before returning to dormancy. The pattern repeats every 50 to 100,000 years. Dr. Vasquez felt her blood run cold.
Are you suggesting some kind of cyclical extinction event? Something that specifically targets intelligent life?
We do not know for certain, Naya replied, but the timing suggests that such an event may be approaching again. If our calculations are correct, the next occurrence could happen within the next few thousand years. The revelation cast a shadow over what had been a triumphant meeting. Both species had achieved remarkable things independently, but if some form of galactic threat was approaching, they might need to work together simply to survive.
Then, our cooperation becomes even more important, Chen realized.
If there is some form of existential threat approaching, we'll need to combine our knowledge and capabilities to have any hope of surviving it.
Exactly, Zara agreed. This may be why the ancient prophecies spoke of the coming of humanity.
Not as conquerors or gods, but as partners in the struggle to preserve intelligent life in the galaxy. As the meeting concluded and both groups prepared to return to their respective vessels, they carried with them a new understanding of their place in the universe. The galaxy was not an empty space waiting to be explored, but a vast arena where intelligence and wisdom were constantly tested against forces that sought to extinguish consciousness itself. The four winged sisters and their human counterparts had found each other just in time to face whatever was coming together. The long wait was over, but an even greater challenge was about to begin. As they prepared to depart, both groups established regular communication schedules and began planning for expanded exchanges. The meeting facility would be left in place as a permanent symbol of cooperation between their species, a neutral ground where future negotiations and collaborations could take place. The journey back to their respective ships was quiet, both groups processing the magnitude of what they had learned. First contact had been everything they had hoped for and more, but it had also revealed challenges that neither species had anticipated. Chen found herself thinking about the cycles of extinction that Naya had described. Throughout human history, they had faced existential threats before: climate change, nuclear war, asteroid impacts, and pandemics. Each time, they had survived through innovation, cooperation, and sheer determination. Now it appeared they might need to apply those same qualities on a galactic scale. As the New Horizons resumed its original heading, Chen began composing her report to Earth Command. The discovery of the Kethmori would change everything about humanity's understanding of the galaxy and their place within it. But, more importantly, it would mark the beginning of a partnership that might be crucial to the survival of both species in the trials ahead. 6 months after first contact, the Joint Research Station designated Harmony Point floated serenely in the neutral space where the initial meeting had taken place. What had begun as a temporary meeting facility had evolved into a permanent installation, a testament to the extraordinary cooperation between the Kethmori and human civilizations. The station now sprawled across several kilometers, its organic curves blending seamlessly with geometric human architecture. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the central laboratory, working alongside Naya to decode fragments of ancient data they had discovered in the ruins of a dead civilization. The xenobiologist had spent the last 4 months living and working with the Kethmori, learning their language and customs while sharing human scientific methods. The collaboration had proven more fruitful than either species had dared to hope. The mathematical patterns in this data fragment are unlike anything we've seen before, Vasquez observed, studying the holographic display that showed the reconstructed information. It's as if whoever created this was trying to encode a warning about something that exists outside normal spacetime. Naya's wing patterns flickered with concentration as she processed the data through her own analytical frameworks.
The linguistic structure suggests extreme urgency.
This was not a casual observation but a desperate attempt to preserve crucial information for future civilizations. Over the past months, the joint research teams had made a series of disturbing discoveries. The ancient ruins scattered throughout the galaxy were not randomly distributed but followed a specific pattern, as if some force had systematically eliminated spacefaring civilizations across vast regions of space.
More troubling still, the dates of these extinctions seem to correlate with astronomical events that occurred at regular intervals. Commander Chen entered the laboratory, her expression grim. She had just returned from a meeting with the expanded Council of Sisters, a governing body that now included human representatives alongside the traditional Kethmori leadership. The political implications of their discoveries were becoming as significant as the scientific ones. "What's our status on the Deep Space Monitoring Network?" Chen asked, referring to the expanded sensor array that both civilizations had been constructing around the galaxy's rim. 73% complete, replied Dr.
James Park, David's younger brother who had joined the project as a specialist in quantum communications. "We're detecting some unusual energy signatures from the galactic void, but nothing that matches the patterns we've been looking for." Lisa looked up from her workstation where she had been calibrating sensors with human quantum detection equipment.
"Actually, there is something new.
The background radiation levels in several sectors have been shifting in ways that don't match any known natural phenomena.
It's subtle, but the pattern is definitely artificial." The room fell silent as the implications sank in.
For 6 months, they had been preparing for the possibility that the cyclical extinction events might begin again. The evidence suggested that some form of intelligence or force emerged from the spaces between galaxies every 50 to 100,000 years, systematically eliminating spacefaring civilizations before retreating to dormancy.
"How long do we have?" Chen asked quietly.
"Based on the historical patterns, anywhere from 500 to 3,000 years, Naya replied. "But the energy signatures Lisa detected suggest the process may be beginning earlier than our models predicted." Kira, who had been training human security personnel in advanced combat techniques, moved to the tactical display.
"Our defensive preparations are proceeding ahead of schedule. The combined fleet now includes 67 vessels equipped with hybrid human Kethmori technologies.
But we still don't know what we're preparing to fight." The question had haunted both civilizations since the discovery of the extinction cycles. Every piece of evidence pointed to some form of intelligence that possessed technologies far beyond anything currently understood. The few surviving records suggested that entire star systems had been drained of energy, their planets stripped bare of life before being abandoned to drift through space as cold, dead rocks. Dr. Vasquez turned away from the data display, her mind working through the puzzle they had been trying to solve for months.
"What if we're approaching this wrong? We've been assuming that whatever causes these extinctions is hostile, but what if it's something else entirely?"
"Such as?"
Zara asked, entering the laboratory with the quiet grace that characterized all her movements.
The eldest sister had become the unofficial coordinator between the two civilizations, her wisdom and diplomatic skills proving invaluable in managing the unprecedented cooperation.
"What if it's not an invader but a natural phenomenon?" Vasquez suggested. "Something that feeds on the energy signatures created by advanced civilizations?"
That would explain the systematic nature of the extinctions and the long dormancy periods. Naya considered this carefully, her wing patterns shifting to indicate deep thought. A galaxy-scale organism or mechanism that emerges periodically to harvest the energy generated by intelligent life.
It would explain why the extinctions follow astronomical cycles rather than political or military patterns.
The idea was both terrifying and oddly comforting. Fighting a hostile invasion fleet, no matter how advanced, was something both civilizations could understand. But defending against a natural force that treated intelligent life as nothing more than a food source would require completely different strategies. If that's the case, then our approach needs to change, Chen realized. We can't fight a force of nature, but we might be able to hide from it or find ways to make ourselves less appetizing as targets. Over the following weeks, the research focus shifted from military preparations to camouflage and concealment technologies. The joint teams began developing methods to mask the energy signatures of advanced civilizations, creating technologies that could make entire star systems appear uninhabited to sensors operating on scales they were only beginning to understand. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Marcus Rodriguez, who had been studying ancient Kethmori meditation techniques, discovered that certain harmonic frequencies could disrupt quantum field fluctuations in ways that might make technological signatures undetectable. Combined with human stealth technologies, they began developing what they called civilization cloaking.
The principle is sound, Lisa explained to the assembled research teams.
By generating specific interference patterns, we can make our energy signatures appear to be natural phenomena. A spacefaring civilization would look like nothing more than stellar background noise.
The first successful test was conducted on a small research outpost in an isolated system.
Within hours of activating the cloaking system, the station became effectively invisible to their most sophisticated sensors. More importantly, deep space monitoring equipment detected no trace of the artificial energy signatures that marked the presence of advanced technology.
"It works," Chen announced to the Joint Council. "We can hide ourselves."
The question now is whether we can scale this technology to protect entire civilizations.
The answer came through the most ambitious engineering project in galactic history.
Both the human and Kethmori governments committed enormous resources to constructing massive harmonic generators throughout their territories. The devices, each the size of a small moon, worked in concert to create interference patterns that could mask the energy signatures of thousands of inhabited worlds. As the network neared completion, disturbing news arrived from the deep space monitoring stations. The energy signatures from the galactic void were growing stronger, and long-range sensors were detecting movement on a scale that defied comprehension. Something vast was stirring in the darkness between galaxies, and it was beginning to turn its attention toward their region of space.
"Time is running out faster than we anticipated," Zara announced to an emergency session of the Joint Council. "Our calculations suggest we have perhaps 50 years before whatever is coming reaches the outer systems." The race against time became desperate as both civilizations worked to complete their preparations.
The cloaking network was expanded to cover not just human and Kethmori territories but also the spacefaring civilizations that both species had encountered during their explorations. Ancient grudges and territorial disputes were set aside as the scope of the threat became clear. Dr. Vasquez found herself working 18-hour days, training teams from a dozen different species in the operation of the cloaking technologies. The scientific cooperation that had begun with the meeting between four winged sisters and a human exploration crew had expanded into the largest collaborative effort in known galactic history.
"Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we had never met," Vasquez confided to Naya during a brief rest break.
"Would both our civilizations have faced this threat alone?" "The ancient prophecies speak of humanity as the catalyst," Naya replied thoughtfully. "Perhaps your species was always meant to bring the scattered civilizations together for this moment." The philosophical implications of their situation were staggering. If the extinction cycles had been operating for millions of years, then countless civilizations had faced this threat and failed.
The current collection of spacefaring species might represent the first alliance powerful enough and technologically advanced enough to successfully hide from the cosmic predator.
As the final components of the cloaking network were activated, both civilizations held their collective breath. The harmonic generators hummed with power that could be felt across multiple star systems, creating interference patterns that washed across the galaxy like invisible waves. Within hours, the energy signatures of advanced civilization began to fade from long-range sensors. The test came sooner than expected. Deep space monitors detected massive shapes moving through the outer regions of the galaxy, entities so large that entire star systems appeared as mere specks beside them. The shapes moved with purpose, following paths that took them directly toward areas where spacefaring civilizations had once thrived.
But now those areas appeared empty. The cloaking network held, hiding billions of intelligent beings behind veils of harmonic interference.
The massive entities passed through inhabited systems without stopping, their sensors apparently detecting nothing more than natural stellar phenomena. For 3 months, the galaxy held its breath as the cosmic harvesters moved through space, searching for the energy signatures that would indicate the presence of advanced civilization. Star systems that had been carefully evacuated or cloaked remained untouched, while ancient ruins and abandoned worlds showed signs of having been thoroughly scanned and analyzed.
Finally, the entities began to withdraw, returning to the dark spaces between galaxies. The crisis had passed, but its implications would reshape galactic civilization forever. The scattered species that had hidden together would need to remain connected, maintaining the cloaking network and preparing for the next cycle. "We did it," Chen announced to a celebration that spanned dozens of worlds. "We survived the harvest." But even as the civilizations celebrated their survival, the leadership of both humans and Kethmori were already planning for the future. The cloaking network would need to be maintained and improved. New generations would need to be trained in its operation. Most importantly, they would need to find ways to continue advancing scientifically and culturally while remaining hidden from cosmic forces that viewed intelligence itself as a resource to be harvested. Zara stood once again at the observation portal of the ancient observatory, now expanded and equipped with technologies that neither species could have imagined alone. Her sisters worked alongside human scientists and representatives from a dozen other species, united by their shared experience of surviving the impossible. "The wait is over," she said softly to herself, watching as ships from multiple civilizations moved through space under the protection of the harmonic cloak. But the real work is just beginning. The four-winged sisters had waited 3,000 years for humanity to arrive. Now they would work together for the next 50,000 years, maintaining the hidden civilization that their cooperation had made possible. The galaxy had become a sanctuary for intelligence, protected by the combined wisdom and innovation of species that had learned to value cooperation over conquest. In the depths of space, the cosmic entities settled back into dormancy, their sensors having detected nothing of interest in a galaxy that appeared to contain only the random fluctuations of stellar evolution. They would sleep for another cycle, unaware that beneath their notice, billions of intelligent beings continued to explore, discover, and grow together in the safety of their hidden alliance. The age of hiding had begun, but it was also an age of unprecedented cooperation. Humanity's gift for innovation, combined with Kethmori wisdom and the unique capabilities of dozens of other species, had created something new in galactic history, a civilization that could survive by choosing wisdom over visibility, cooperation over competition. As the celebration continued across the hidden worlds, plans were already being made for the next phase of their development. They would need to explore new regions of space while remaining cloaked, develop new technologies without creating detectable signatures, and maintain their alliance across the vast distances and timescales involved. The four-winged sisters had waited for humanity to arrive and bring change to the galaxy. Now that change had come, not in the form of conquest or dominion, but as the foundation for a new kind of civilization. One that valued survival through cooperation, growth through sharing, and strength through unity. The wait was over, but the real adventure was just beginning. In the hidden depths of space, protected by technologies born from the marriage of human innovation and Kethmori wisdom, galactic civilization prepared to flourish in ways that had never been possible before. The age of the cosmic harvest had ended, and the age of the hidden garden had begun.